questions that like.
Right.
Okay.
So, from your observation in in your class, how do in, when I say Asian international student, and you have to connect that to your observation or your personal experience, either in class or out of class setting. Do you have can you share that experience
Okay, well,
with
I
us?
should preface this by saying it is my first semester, and I am only going to school part-time, so I have a very sort of limited experience set that to deal with, but I do see actually a disconnect between classroom Asians and out-of-class Asians. And I'm sure I'm not saying this very politically correct, but like in class, and especially in a larger class with sort of like a more aggressive atmosphere, I do see sort of a hesitation and sort of falling back, sort of wallflower behavior amongst a lot of the Asian students in our class. And if I think about who's actually speaking and who is, besides the professor, who's actually Asian, who's like guiding and really inputting into the conversation. I mean, granted, it is like a handful of people, but I feel like the international students sort of fall by the wayside and they maybe feel intimidated. It's a very different sort of, I can understand it's like a very different atmosphere than sort of their background, and I do see that sort of being an issue because they're not speaking up and they're not sort of like putting their input, because you do have to be a bit sort of aggressive and the American style of like putting your 2 cents in, getting your opinion sort of heard, and it's like I can see how that is sort of a disconnect with the sort of interactions with the international Asians within the classroom. Not all classrooms, like it's just the ones that are very heavily sort of aggressive. Out of the classroom though, much more willing to speak, much more willing to like present their ideas and interact, but that also has to do with the individualist nature of a conversation versus a classroom where it's, even for like non-international students, it can be very sort of daunting to have to speak in front of your class. And a lot of people are not like me who have no filter, and they will not raise their hands. There are people who in our class are not international students who I've never really heard speak, so it's not necessarily strictly an international student affair, but I see that it's a handicap with the entire like the background education in terms of getting yourself out there and having to really be aggressive and be loud and get your opinions and say them, and that could be also that the language and the sort of shyness that comes with having not be your mother tongue. But out of the classroom, I don't really see that at all. I have found my interactions with the FOBs, the fresh off the boats, as highly engaging, very friendly, very willing to interact with the general population, and actually wanting to interact with, like from what I've had my multiple conversations with the different international Asian students, that they actually really want to spend time with and get to know the American students, and that it's a little hard to do so because you feel a little intimidated, and so that I can see how that breeds about sort of the like makes like and Asian finding Asian, because then you feel comfortable, you're speaking Chinese and you understand each other, but that being said, it could be because the people who are speaking to me, who are the more gregarious, the more outgoing, the more extroverted. So I think the problem would be if you're not outgoing, you're not extroverted, you're not gregarious, you are introverted, and you are from Asia. You come from a society where you are not used to the forthright nature of Americans and are sort of a very lack of filter and sort of maybe more aggressive nature and our sort of loudness. I can see that population, specifics population amongst the international Asian students not fitting in, because part of it is you give what you get what you give. You have to get out there and actually engage yourself with the other people, whether you're an international Asian student and you want to engage yourself with the rest of the TC community, or if you're an American student coming from out of town to TC and to interact with the rest of the TC population. It's just, what I can understand would be hard is if your background is different and your interactive styles are different. But that's part of the choice that you made to come to American school. So, you know, if you aren't willing to put yourself out there and talk to people, then it's kind of like, why are you here? I don't know.
So you mentioned that you are kind of extrovert. You know, you have this kind of personality.
I call it the Napoleon complex.
Okay. So, but if you imagine that you were a shy people, you know, a very shy girl, then consider a given TCD's environment, do you think you will have any chance to interact with those international Asian students?
I think if I'm like putting myself in the moment. I am becoming an international Asian. I'm shy. I would probably most likely only speak to other international students, and I would not engage with the other populations because it would be really hard. And like that's for like a shyness is kind of a universal attribute that all societies have. But I can totally see how if you were more introverted and you were more shy, you would be less likely to want to speak English and less likely to want to interact with other people. And that itself, it's like you only get better at anything by doing it. So if you're actually not using your English in a conversational manner and picking up those strange sort of words that we put in, and like I'm sure there's so many words that like colloquial expressions and everything like that that you learn only from speaking to a native speaker, or like exchanging ideas and really, you know, getting to know people from, because America is like American, and that's sort of presumptuous to call America. The United States is extremely diverse. It is extremely diverse in terms of ethnic, cultural, geographic. I mean, it's a huge, it's actually, it's not as big as China, but it's like in terms of, I feel in terms of diversity, we're pretty diverse, especially in New York City. But again, like I was saying, it's your responsibility to take these upon yourself. And I would hope that as someone coming from abroad, that you would have to factor these things into your decision to come to TC, your decision to come to any sort of American, United States, whatever institution. These are things that they should have thought about, and it's understandable you get here, it's a little bit different to not sort of fit in or whatever, but I really don't have any sympathy because you made this decision to come here, and you know, you gotta be resilient, and you gotta, like, you know, it's part of life to adapt and survive. And if you don't adapt and you survive, then maybe this isn't the place for you.
Okay, so from observer's perspective, do you have any suggestion for school, you know, that can help either native American not native English speaker or international Asian students?
I mean, there's the whole idea of like, there's lots of things that they could do. You could have like a buddy system where like